start off by thanking Jim and the Arlington Renewal Project for bringing this issue to the forefront of all of us and getting us involved, from the community members to the town officials to our state officials to our real estate agents to our banking. So thank you so much for hosting us today. Just a quick little, why am I here and why am I the facilitator today for something like this? I was born and raised here in Arlington and graduated from AMHS in 1996. Shortly thereafter, I welcomed my first child. I bought my first home, which was my starter home. My husband and I have now been there 20 years. We're going to be empty nesters at the end of this summer, as our children will both be in college, and we will ridiculously and quite embarrassingly dote upon our dog, who is the only one still at home. So though we were forced to have 4 adults living in one small home with 1 full bath, we did it. And we now found ourselves in the perfect size home for us to retire in. And thanks to the Bank of Bennington 20 years ago for taking a chance on myself as a 21-year-old, I have my home today. A little bit about what our talk is and our panel. We are looking at the vision for Arlington 2025, and we have a panel of experts in their fields. We by no means have all the answers to all the issues that we've already started to address this morning, but we are here for a reason, because we want to be a part of that solution. Like myself, I work here, I live here, and I love here. There's not one piece of Arlington that you could ask me about that I'd have a bad thing to say, because I like to find the silver linings. There's things that don't work great, but we're going to figure out how we can make them better. I've spent the last 3.5 years as the Development Director and Community Relations at Battenkill Valley Health Center. We're Bennington County's only federally qualified health center, and we serve 3,800 people from 77 surrounding towns from Massachusetts, New York, and Vermont. I don't know if some of you in Arlington would be surprised by that number. So similar to Mac Molding, so they employ a lot of folks who don't live here. We serve a lot of folks who don't live here. And one of the resounding things that we hear from our patients is not only do we have a really amazing health center that hosts medical services, dental services, and mental health services, but we're in a town where it's sweet, it's kind, the people are nice, we smile when we see each other. We have the Green Mountain Transportation that is able to bring folks from Bennington, Manchester, Rutland, right to our front door, literally, on 7A at our location. So we have so many things going for us, and we do have many issues. And again, we're not here to solve those issues, but be a part of the solution. So with that, I want to introduce our panel, and by introducing, I'm going to introduce by name. They are then going to give a bio and a little bit about what they do, what they're seeing as some of the current issues, and then we're going to work on discussing how we're looking forward to the future in that vision for 2025. So Margaretta Fisher, if you would.
Sure. Hi all, I'm Margaretta. I moved to Arlington in 1992. My husband is a multi-generational resident. He, was born here, went to college, came back. I met him and fell in love with Arlington. We live right next to the school, so I'm in a fishbowl. I see everything. Everyone coming to school every day. It's great. We raised a lot of children here, and we've had 4 graduate from the high school. We have 1 currently in the pre-K program, just graduating. And we just intend to be here for the rest of our lives. We love it here. There's so many people, I feel, that have the same emotional attachment to Arlington as I do. And I am a full-time realtor. I'm a multi-generational, 3rd-generation realtor. And I can just see our small community maintaining this beautiful connection to each other. Like Kate was saying, we go to the store, we smile, we know the people, we ask, like today, for instance, today's my 25th wedding anniversary. We went to Stewart's this morning, and I think 5 people wished us happy anniversary because they knew it's our anniversary. We were married down on the in on the covered bridge green, green right there on the Batten Kill, and it was perfect, and it still is perfect today. And we want to maintain the historic value and the rural value that we have, but also allow for people to come and enjoy it here, because we have lists of people that want to move to Arlington, people that want to come to our school district now that they've discovered it, because it is fabulous. I have 4 children that have graduated college because of our wonderful education they're providing here. So, to make a long story short, I live here, I love here, and I work here. And Arlington has so much potential, and it's just bubbling up everywhere, from young couples to seniors. That's another thing that I don't think we've touched on enough here, is that our community is available for all aspects. So from the pre-Kers that we were talking about, getting free education, which is to be combined to be a free college education. If you took the pre-K program and you broke it down into a weekly amount of how much parents are saving, they can put that towards a college education. So that is a huge bonus for people to move here. And then also our seniors. If I go to a basketball game, there are seniors supporting all of our children, rooting for them. I mean, it's such a passion. You don't find that everywhere. I know I went to high school at Burton and a couple other schools, but I grew up in the Dorset area, and I didn't feel that sense of community like I feel here, and that's why I feel so connected and wanting to work here and support our community. So, as a real estate agent, there are so many people that want to live here. We just have to find the housing, whether it's, you know, rebuilding the historic homes, or it's a mixture of finding some new land to build homes. I think there's a happy medium that everyone could be a part of. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, Margaretta. So some of the other things that we've talked about this morning is looking at, Faith had let us know earlier this morning that there's 27 homes currently on the market in Arlington, opposed to the 55 average homes in the past two years or so.
There's 44 currently sold in Arlington right now, this year.
So of the 27 homes that in the level that we're looking at, that $250,000 level and below, and what are the barriers to those folks who are looking for those homes? They're looking for mortgages. Who's lending to them? They're first homeowners. They are young. They have young families. So I'm excited to have Shannon McLenithan from the Bank of Bennington here to speak on what are the options as a lender in our community that our buyers, our potential buyers have, and those folks who are currently renting in Arlington who want to buy in Arlington, what are their options? And so Shannon, thank you so much for being here. If you don't mind, a quick little bio, and thank you.
Thank you for having me. Welcome. I'm glad to be here. I'm Senior Vice President for the Bank of Bennington. I oversee the residential lending area, so we see quite a bit of activity in the Bennington County area. I first have to say, coming in after lunch is always a tough gig to follow, because everybody's kind of starting to doze off, and Kate wants me to keep it exciting, but I'm a banker, you know, how exciting can be. So thanks for putting me on it, Kate, appreciate it. You know, I work for the Bank of Bennington, been there 6 years. It's been a privilege to work for a community bank, because they truly do care about the communities that they serve. And we do have a lot of programs available for home buyers. And I don't know if anybody, I wasn't here for the earlier session, so I apologize, but has anybody talked about the magic M word, like millennials?
No.
Right? Like, how do you go through a housing discussion when you're talking about millennials? In 2018, they represented 38% of the home purchases in the country. So I think it would be remiss of us not to think about millennials and what attracts them as we talk about the housing situation in any of our communities. And so what is a millennial? They're somebody that researches everything to death, right? I mean, they don't want to repeat their parents' mistakes. They've lived through their parents' mistakes. So they're very educated and informed about their decisions. They're goal-oriented and driven. So in that research piece, we talked about why do people not know about what's out there. You know, we have to do a better job at communicating the resources that are out there. I mean, I'm a millennial, an old millennial. very end of the teenage age group. But, you know, years ago, you had to have 20% down, right? I mean, those days are long gone. I mean, how many folks who are in the 50, 60 age group that would have loved to have the opportunity to buy a home without having to save 20% down? It's a huge misconception that you still need 20% down. And there are a lot of programs out there. Through the Bank of Bennington, we offer 2 grant programs. That one is a $15,000 grant to low to moderate income families. That $15,000 closes the gap for a lot of home buyers, and you don't have to be a first-time home buyer for that. And a new grant that just came out is Housing Our Workforce, which is for those folks making a little bit more than the 80% area median income. So those opportunities are out there. And then the USDA program. I mean, we do so many USDA guaranteed loans in the Bennington County area that because of the income threshold, it's just, there's quite a few people that qualify for those. And then also, you know, with NeighborWorks, so they have really great programs through NeighborWorks with rehabilitation loans for older housing stock, but also the education piece. You know, I wish there was a way to make education required for any type of mortgage, because it's the biggest investment anybody will make. It's, once you get through the purchasing, it's maintaining that home for the life. When you get to the piece where you have older housing stock and people can't afford to maintain their homes. And the NeighborWorks education program is such a wonderful program that it'd be wonderful if we could make every homeowner take that before they buy a home.
That's great.
So that's a little bit of information.
Wonderful, thank you, Shannon. And then next, we've also talked about a lot of the building barriers that we have in our community, and we've spoken a lot about wastewater and things like that, but we haven't touched upon other zoning regulations that we might have as barriers. And so Kirk Moore, a local architect, is here, and he's going to give us a little bit of bio of what he does and what maybe barriers he sees as issues today. And then we can also, again, take that conversation and look towards the future. Kirk, thanks for coming.
I moved up here in 1987 from Florida. I kind of went the backwards route. A lot of people ask me, why did you move from Florida to Vermont? But I got to tell you, I loved every year of the 32 years I've been here. I primarily lived in Manchester. I did have a house in Sunderland for about 7 years on Sunderland Hill Road, and really enjoyed that. Moved back to Manchester a couple of years ago. I had an office in Bennington as well as Rutland, so I've seen both ends of southern Vermont and practiced in both of those offices for about 10 years. Worked with quite a few affordable housing projects in both Bennington and Rutland. Did a couple projects with the Shires down in Bennington, and done a lot of land use planning. The last 4 or 5 years I've been really focusing on my own time of trying to tackle the affordable housing issues in Manchester, which are very much an overlay of what you're experiencing in Arlington. One thing I do think that's important to have as part of the discussion is there's a group of people that are kind of in between affordable housing and market housing, that we kind of use the analogy often where it's a teacher and a police officer couple. They can't afford to buy a house with their 2 incomes. And there's a lot of people out there like that, yet they don't qualify for subsidized housing. So they're kind of stuck in between. It's really difficult to find a house in Manchester or Arlington that doesn't need a lot of work under $250,000. So kind of the benchmark that I've been focusing on is trying to figure out a way to do development that is attractive for investors and developers that can provide housing in that 250 under market, which is really, really difficult to get. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So that's a little bit about myself.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have John Williams, who is from one of our town administrators, and he will be able to speak to us a little bit about maybe the number of applications he's seeing for new homes or the lack of that. and address some of the issues he sees at a town level. I think it was interesting, I was reading in our last town plan that something like in 2007, now of course we all know 2007, 2008, what happened. And so we have some real kind of glaring reasons why some of this trending has happened. But I also just found it really startling when I saw hard numbers. So in 2007, I believe, don't quote me, you can check the plan later, there was something like 21 new homes being built in Arlington. And in the last 10 years, it's been in the single digits. I think as most recently in that town report down to 4. So is that there's not enough land issue? Is that there's issues with the septics and the wastewater? So I'm hoping that John will be able to give us a little insight on that, but he's going to first introduce himself, and thanks, John, for being here.
Okay, thanks, Kate. My name is John Williams, and I've only been here 14 years. And before that, I retired from GE as an engineer in power plant business, designing blades and testing. So I don't have a lot of background, or any background in housing, other than having worked on the planning commission. I'm now chairman of the planning commission for 8 years, and having lived in town. But that's why I put in the handout what Kate was talking about, and that's from your own town plan, the history of what's been going on in Arlington. And in the 60s, the growth rate and population was very good. In the 70s, it wasn't quite as good. In the 80s and 90s, it was even slower. Well, between 2000 and 2010, it went down. And so we share the same problem that Vermont does, and a lot of the Northeast. We don't have a lot of people coming our way. And more of them potentially are going to be leaving. And if you take that into housing, what Kate was talking about, we used to have housing growth that was, really very good. It was, in 2000, the highest we ever had. We had 20 homes, licensed, permitted by the land use commission. And by 2007, it was down to 12. Of course, that was when the Great Recession hit. In 2008, it went down to 4. And 2012, it was down to 1 home permit. I updated that's a table in your current town plan. I updated that for this presentation. And in 2013, it was 3, 14, it was 3 homes, 2 homes in 2015, 2 homes in 2016, 3 in 2017, 3 in 2018 permitted. So you can see that it's dropped way down. It's not a case of growth, but it's stable, I guess, if you want to call it that. And we are growing a lot of homes, if you want to look at it that way. And the reason I spoke up earlier when we were talking about homes, I said, you guys really need to find out what the kids want, what the young people want. Because they may not want homes. They want a stable apartment place that's close by that they can live in. Or a townhouse, or even a duplex, because those use less land. And if we don't have a lot of land, we're going to have to do that. And we have to consider tearing down homes and putting multifamily up where there was 1 old home and maybe 2 or 3 different apartments now, such as along East Arlington Road. That's really what I can contribute to this situation.
Thank you, John.
Can I chime in a little bit?
No, absolutely.
Just to piggyback on John's comment, what we see in the banking industry is that the cost to build is gotten so that it's unaffordable. So it's cheaper to buy an existing home than it is to build. So it may not necessarily be the lack of land inventory, but the cost to build exceeds the market value. So if you go to a bank and you want to get a construction loan to build a home, a lot of times you have to have a lot more cash in your pocket because the appraisal isn't going to appraise out high enough to get the financing for the construction loan. And we see that quite often.
And I'm going to say something that we have a lot of land for sale still. It's not that there's a lack of land. It's the cost to develop the land to make it build worthy. So you need to have power, you need to have water, and you need to have septic, right? septic again. But we need, so factor all those in, and then the cost to build on top of that. So it is worthy to, take an existing structure and renovate it to make it a livable, whether it's an apartment, duplex, multifamily, whatever have you. But, great.
So earlier in today's agenda, we had tabletop discussions, and one of them was kind of challenged with recognizing the issues that they see for the future. And so without action, these were what came out of that, and you'll recall these from earlier discussions. Without action on dilapidated homes and housing options, we're going to see a population decline continue, right? We're going to see the housing stock decline. We're going to see existing homes that are too expensive to get into and repair. We're going to see businesses that might relocate due to no housing for their employees. And then there's a tax burden that gets put onto the residents at that point if businesses move out. We'll see a health decline, as mentioned, with homes being in disrepair with the residents in those homes, as well as the other homes around them. And then we face the issues of schools closing due to the lack of that enrollment. So that's all very sad and daunting, right? So how do we move forward, and how do we have that vision for 2025? So what I'd like to ask the panel members, and I'd ask the audience too, to really engage in this conversation is, we've talked a lot about the solutions as far as grants, where the funding can come from. But we're all here for a reason, right? We want to be a part of this solution. So I'd like the discussion to be a little bit more fluid at this point. Can someone give me how much time we have till 2?
I will tell you, it's 1:47.
Oh, we've got lots of time. So what I'd really like to do is have, if there's specific questions or thoughts for the Vision 2025 from people who aren't in our community, that I know there's some representatives from Habitat from Humanity. How can we partner with them? We've had some homes in the community built by them. And so how do we start addressing these issues, the low-hanging fruit, right? The things that we can do and be a part of today, tomorrow, and then have those kind of 5-year goals. So one, open the floor for some questions and statements. Yes?
Thank you for mentioning Habitat for Humanity. I was really excited, as were Ann Pierce, with whom I work, and Bill Hoyt, who's on our board, that we were asked to be a part of at least coming and being here. So you asked, how can you partner with us? I'd encourage you all to contact the town of Manchester. You can speak with Janet Hurley, the zoning administrator. In 2006, the town of Manchester approached Bennington County Habitat for Humanity and asked if we would be interested in doing an affordable housing neighborhood with them in the town. And this Habitat affiliate, which has built 26 homes, brought 26 people home now since 1999, said yes. The community stepped up, and the affiliate was able to raise $1.5 million to do the infrastructure work in a 22-home neighborhood that we are building, the Jennifer Lane neighborhood in Manchester Center. We have 9 people who are homeowners there now. We had a private developer very generously, and I would love to talk with you about this, Kurt, since you're interested in affordable housing. Step up and say, I want to do 11 of your 22 lots. Now, he realized after doing one house that he can't make enough money because he is in it for profit, whereas Habitat is not. And so he has had to step away, but I would love to talk to any other developers, architects, folks in the building business who would be interested in helping us develop the rest of the lots. The goal is for Habitat, which works with people earning between 30 and 70%, perhaps up to 80% of the area median income, to be building on those lots, and then another developer, and this was what that particular developer wanted to do to help the people that the term workforce housing applies to, earning between 80 and 120%. The great thing about Habitat for Humanity is that people from all over come together. It's not about necessarily getting your funding from the government. And that's what I liked very much about what Mr. Baker said at the beginning. This is all grassroots. You can't wait around for the government forever. You got to step up and do something on your own. You have to reach out to your community, and the community will give back. And so that's what Habitat's doing. If you guys have land here, well then let Habitat work with you. Develop the infrastructure. Help you figure out how to do septic someplace. We had to do that at the Jennifer Lane neighborhood. Let's build affordable housing for everybody. We all work really hard. I don't care how much money you make or how little money you make, we all need an affordable place to call home. We can do this together. So please, contact us. Talk to Janet Hurley at the town. I can share with you the town plan and how they came up with their affordable housing covenants. The Vermont Housing Conservation Board is a great help, not only to rental housing, but to people who want to become homeowners and do wealth creation, equity building, not see all their money go, for lack of a better way of putting it, down the toilet when you're renting, but actually have something at the end of the day. We don't all need to be homeowners, and some of us do very well renting, but this is how we can help you too. So please, please get a hold of us, and we can work together and make it happen. Do you have any questions? Thanks for the floor, I appreciate it.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So, did I understand that Habitat here also loans people the money to buy their affordable homes?
No,
I'm
well,
not quite sure.
our Habitat affiliate still originates and services its own mortgages. We have tried by contacting the Bank of Bennington. We've had conversations before with Shannon. We've contacted credit unions to see whether they'd be willing to take on mortgage origination and servicing. But this affiliate, as do many of the 1,300 affiliates, especially the small and rural affiliates around the country, originate and service the mortgages. It's all donated money. That's the only way we can build a house, is when we get the funds in to do it. We're trying to partner with the USDA, perhaps. Those would be interest-bearing loans. But the houses that we originate and service are zero interest loans. So those folks are, you know, you want to talk about subsidies, and people always feel they need to get their money back with the subsidy. It depends on how you look philosophically at helping people and what the goal of helping people is. But when a Habitat affiliate originates and services their own loans, they are, in effect, building the house, and what it costs to build the house is what the person's first mortgage amount is going to be. And if they're lucky enough to get a grant from the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, and those monies have gone up to $30,000 now, that comes off the first mortgage. We can build houses for $100 a square foot or less, not $250,000 to $300,000 to build one apartment unit. So, you know, we all work together. We can all work together. Shires Housing, anybody else who's doing affordable rental housing and affordable home ownership. And with affordable home ownership, like I said, you're helping people build equity and wealth creation, which after all is supposedly the American dream.
Thank you.
So one of the things we talked about earlier as far as what we're lacking in Arlington, because again, we're looking at the vision for Arlington 2025, and moving forward is the lack of houses on the market. So what I would like to do is kind of open up the floor to not only our panelist, who's a real estate agent, and maybe our lender friends, but those in the room who can give us some advice on how do we increase that. I mean, realistically and logically, I get that we just have to have more houses on the market. I get that. But how do we work there if we're not trying to push folks who are in those homes out? So how do we make more housing available if 55 houses were previously on the market as an average, down to about half of that-ish? Again, I understand the number game of that someone has to move out to move someone into a current home. But are we looking at second homes that we're looking to attract first home, like primary residents at? So I'd kind of like to open that discussion for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So maybe Margaret, I don't know if you want to start on that, and I'd open the floor to some other thoughts.
Well, we can always go back to land again and developing that. There's a lot of land that, is available in Arlington, and it's affordable. It's very affordable. But we have to be able to have the resources and the grant money. So that's when we come into the renovation loans or the construction loans. And Bank of Bennington has worked really hard, and I've done quite a few with Wendy, to bring them together, not to mention other lenders that are working, to provide funds for us to be able to develop the land or to fix up the houses to make them appealing, because our millennials, they do not want to paint. They do not want to do anything because they're working full-time and they're getting ready to have a family. So we need to make these houses ready, move-in ready, and they want a little bit of land. They live in Vermont now. They want to live in Vermont, and they don't want to be right next door to someone else. And also a bonus to Vermont is that we're not cookie cutter. So I think that, making them all a standard house is not really appealing, because our catch here is our character. We really have a special niche where it comes to, we're not, cookie cutter, everyone's the same. We have some charm and character. We have some Victorian properties. We have some bungalows, very rare, but we have some beautiful homes that should be fixed up and land to be refurbished. So.
Yeah, I think it's understanding what the needs are. Are there folks here that are in Arlington that are renting that want to buy? And if so, what do they want? What are they looking for? Maybe it's a survey to folks that live in Arlington and ask them, are you looking? If I was a millennial in Arlington, do I want a house with acreage?
Right.
Well,
That's what I'm finding.
And it was at the Economic Development Summit a couple weeks ago, and they said that average Vermonters have 3 jobs. Well, if you got 3 jobs, how are you going to maintain property? So we may think that our millennials want acreage, they want that may not be what they want. So I think it's important to start with what do they want, what are they looking for, and
well, when I get a call, if I get a cold call for a house, usually people are looking for moving into the area. I want a little bit of land, not too much, but I want a little bit. I don't want to be, I want views, because we have beautiful mountain views here, right? So that's very true. Low maintenance is a huge factor to our 3-job working couples.
Kirk, you were going to say something.
Well, I hear everything you're saying, and I hear that from a lot of people. The problem is some of those desires are in conflict
yes.
with trying to produce housing that's affordable. I mean, the only way you're going to get there, and I'm really more addressing new housing stock, whether it be rental or for sale, versus existing housing stock, is there's several barriers. One is zoning. The only way to drive costs down is to increase densities. Or that's one factor that drives costs down. So you really have to be thinking about, and this is part of the whole master plan discussion, but if you want to concentrate your housing in the village, I call it more the village because it's not really a big downtown, with perhaps some other commercial uses, then you look at zoning that's 20 units to an acre. It's multi-story buildings, it's usually apartment buildings. I do think there is a big millennial market out there. They don't want to own. They prefer to rent, and I think there's also a discussion that needs to be had about rethinking what our housing really is, because especially in Vermont, we all, many of us, especially us that are older, want a backyard and front yard and a 3-bedroom house with a den and a living room and a great room and all those things. But that's just not realistic when you're talking about trying to create a house for $200,000, $250,000, especially in a rental market, because all that cost extrapolates to what the rent's going to be. In order to attract investors to develop that, and I'm talking now specifically about the market that doesn't qualify for a Shire's house or rental apartment, you've got to you've got to set the table to where it's attractive. So by revisiting zoning, and I would also encourage looking at specific sites that are desirable in the town. I went through this exercise in Manchester where we where I identified properties that were, one, affordable, two, had infrastructure to reduce site costs, and three, were in zoning areas that could be bolstered to increase densities. The next one is the infrastructure issue that we touched on earlier. I think it's really important to make that a priority, especially wastewater treatment, as well as water supply. If you can get both on the site, it reduces site costs, and it also gives you the ability to get higher densities. The next big thing is construction costs, and it's out of control in Vermont. I mean, I work with developers in Connecticut and Massachusetts. They're building in Connecticut for 30 to 40% less than they're building in Vermont. So that's a big number, and I don't know what the answer to that is, other than trying to adjust our thinking to smaller houses, smaller apartments. I mean, down in Baltimore and DC, for the millennials, they're doing 300 square foot apartments, and they can't run them fast enough. I mean, it's really incredible. Now, that's an urban environment. Those millennials, they don't cook. They have their bicycle, they bike everywhere, they go out to dinner every night, and they don't need much more than that. I don't think that model fits in Vermont because, again, the expectation is you're moving, especially young people, and the only reason they're moving here is because they like the quality of life better than an urban life. And so can we find that blend where, we can develop 600 square foot, one-bedroom apartments, studio apartments, and then rent them for $600 to $1,000. That's where I think we need to be. And they're doing that in Burlington. There's a big market up there.
That's a totally different, Burlington's crazy.
I understand, but it's a question you have to ask yourself as a community too, is, to your point, the cottage on a half acre of land is kind of the natural thinking in Vermont. But again, to address this issue, that's not reality.
But that's, the square footage could be smaller. I love that idea.
But you have to get more units per acre to get the cost down.
Right.
And the other part of it is an economy of scale. You can't do it by building 5 units at a time. You've got to build 30 units, minimum. And in fact, most projects I look at are somewhere in the 90 to 100 units because that's when the cost can really get down per unit. And also, I think culturally thinking about the design of an apartment building where there's community spaces. So it's a small apartment, but there's other places to interact. There's outdoor space. There may be shared common space that also promotes, a sense of community within the project itself. So there are creative ways to do it, but it is a huge challenge.
Nicole.
I work for Orbis, and what I do for my job is recruit and relocate people here. And we have the majority of the people that we hire that are not current employees. So in the past year and a half, we've filled 60 positions. 40 of them are new to Orbis. And the majority of the people that we hire move here for Orbis. We're really lucky being an outdoor brand. A lot of people are attracted to Vermont because of the outdoor lifestyle. So it makes it easier for us to recruit for a lifestyle perspective. We hire a lot of young professionals. We hire people who grew up here, went away, want to come back. We hire people who love fly fishing, and the idea of living here at the Batten Hill is just a dream. And a lot of what we're talking about is new construction, which I am an Arlington resident, I'm on the school board, I have absolutely a vested interest in seeing all of that happen. As somebody who's working to try to help people find existing rentals, it is impossible. Not that they're not out there, it's just there is no central location to figure out who has rental properties available. It's word of mouth. And I don't know what the solution is to that. I don't even know how many properties in Arlington are even available to rent. If there was a fix to that.
I'm hearing you loud and clear. We did rentals for years, and it was just so overly consuming because there's so many people that want rentals that it just came to be overbearing for us all to have have to answer questions because so many people can't qualify. They need references, they need, they can't afford, so it's.
Matt Holding has 500 employees and we have 240 at Orvis. If there was a way to network within the surrounding communities to say, these are people who have stable jobs, good employment, work with the employers to say, here are the properties that we have available to rent, and try to build a relationship with those employers to help place those people into rentals within the communities. It would be, that's not new construction, that's just how do we network to find out what's already out there and build a better pipeline.
Well, I haven't gone through that myself after I sold my house in Summerlin. I lease. There's actually some good online resources for finding rentals, and I found there's a lot of rentals. The problem is they're very expensive. There's not, in fact, I don't think I found a rental that was under $1,000 a month on all my searches. But there are several websites that have specific Arlington rentals, Manchester rentals, Dorset rentals that you can find.
Yeah.
And they get taken up very quickly.
So what I'll just say, Department of Housing and Community Development, one thing that we've been trying to put together is that list of landlords throughout the entire state. There are separate regions that have their own segregated list, but there's no real one large clearinghouse list of all the landlords in Vermont. We just don't know who they are and where they are in all the communities. So something we are looking at, and hopefully it could become a resource for you. Maybe we'll be calling you to see.
That'd be great. I
Tap
spend a
into
lot
what
of
you
my
have so
time
you
down
have to
there.
live. Another thought I was having listening to you guys talk is the idea of accessory dwelling units, ADUs. It's not technically new construction, it's kind of rehabbing an old home, but if the homes in Arlington are anything like the homes throughout the rest of the state, they're large homes, and nowadays there's only a couple people living in them when, 20 years ago there might have been 6, 7, a large family. So it's an opportunity for somebody who wants to age in place and stay in their home, potentially to add a rental apartment to their home. And there are certainly programs out there through my department and others that can help assist a homeowner to build an ADU to create another rental property in town. And then just the final thought I had about zoning, Kirk, as you were talking about it, the idea of infill development, you can kind of control then a little bit more where people are moving. And one thing I think in Vermont that we love about our state is the viewscapes, and we don't want our viewscape ruined. Well, if we're able to control those infill development and develop our village center, we can preserve the viewscape on the outside of town, and we're not, in some ways we're limiting sprawl because everybody wants to move a little further out and continue to have their viewscape, but if we're able to kind of congregate some of that development, we can preserve some of that viewscape as you get just outside the village center.
Thank you. Kathleen?
Just to bounce off an idea that Kirk mentioned, one idea that I think Alan, I don't know how far he's gotten or how serious he was about it, but I think Alan Benoit up in Manchester was working on sort of a green mini community idea that when I would talk about this to high school kids and college kids, they would light up at the thought that they could stay in or return to Vermont to live in a little intentional mini neighborhood that had, just like you were saying, 3 to 4 almost micro homes, highly energy efficient, solar powered, sharing a community garden, sharing a community space. I mention it only because I'm certainly not a housing development expert, but when I talk to kids about what it could take to get them to move back to Vermont or to stay in Vermont, that kind of housing option was like nirvana to them. Yes. They were so interested. They would come up and ask me if it was built yet, and how they could find one. And I was like, I'm out of my wheelhouse, But just the concept of that, to see how exciting young people found that, especially if you're able to pitch it or frame it as a green living community. Yeah. Because that is what this next generation coming up is all about. And they're going to be looking to move to and raise their families in states and communities that are on the cutting edge of the climate economy and on the cutting edge of climate adaptation.
And again, in many ways, Kathleen, the Shire's development that's in Arlington is a lot, not on the intentionally green perspective, but the
Someday, hopefully.
but the variety of spaces in the small cottages and then the separate apartment building. I mean, it is that structural model.
It's a little neighborhood.
Yeah, it is a nice little neighborhood with a green space.
And there is a directory through Vermont Housing Finance Agency of affordable units as well. You can go through the HFA website and find a directory. Not everyone reports on their units, but it gives you a good starting place for quality.
Could you repeat that so you could speak up so everyone could hear?
The
Yes.
Vermont Housing Finance Agency on their website offers a directory of affordable units so that it's not all of the units, it's not all inclusive, and landlords have to report those, but they're probably quality and affordable.
Housingdata.org, is that website?
Yeah, that's run by VHFA.
Hey, so I work from the Dorset market down, and I can tell you that when I go to list a home, the first thing I think of is who are the buyers for this home. Years ago, the bigger homes in Dorset, the luxury market, 1 million and above, that's what everybody was looking for, Manchester and Dorset. Those people now are aging out. They want to downsize. They've vacationed there for many years. Their kids and now grandkids don't come up to visit as often. They're also not interested in owning a large home. So we have an influx of $1 million plus properties on the market in Dorset. When you think about Arlington, and I should say Dorset, Manchester, those are second homeowner towns. So there's a lot more rentals available in those towns. Granted, they're $3,000 to $5,000 plus a month to rent, but they're rentals. So if you move down to Arlington, I would guess that about 80% of this town are primary residents. We also don't have apartment buildings or very many multifamily properties. So that poses a rental crisis because the people who live in their home year-round need to sell their home to buy. So they're not interested in renting, or they're living there, so they're not interested in renting. Millennials, for years, have been driving this market, the 25 to 35-year-olds. They're not looking for those large homes. They're looking for the $200,000 homes on a half an acre. I will tell you this, while it's lovely to work with millennials, it's also really annoying, because here's what it's like. I have $200,000 to spend on a home, where the granite countertops and the stainless steel appliances, and my master bedroom, private bathroom. And I say, geez, is that what your mom and dad had? And they say yes, and I say, well, you know, they bought a fixer-upper or a starter home when they were young, just like you, and spent 30 years saving and upgrading. And now the millennials walk into the housing market and think that that is what they can buy with their money in their starter home. And it doesn't happen that way. So we're looking right now in Arlington, not being a tourist town, not being a second home market, we're looking at single family homes. I would say we're here to find solutions or make suggestions. We've already talked about public sewer. I'm not going to beat that horse anymore. We've already talked about Wi-Fi, internet access. It's true, many more people these days than those days are working from home, and in order to do that, you need to be able to not dial up. And the third thing I would say is, why are people moving to Arlington? And that's because of the outdoor recreation, that's because of our school systems. And we need to capitalize on those things. So I know it's been talked about at our town meetings before, but I'm going to throw it out there again. Walkability around town is really big with families, and I'm hoping at some point soon we can get some sidewalks to the rec park. All the way from school down 313 to the golf course side, and 7A up to the main entrance. Our kids are going there for after-school sports. Our families are walking there to swim and to recreate, and I think it would be really a good priority to make the safety of those kids and families to the top of the list. So that's what we need to think about. Why are people coming to Arlington? It's not to buy into the second home market. That's, you know, towards Bromley and Stratton and Prospect. So we're stuck in the middle, which is great. Equidistance between Manchester and Bennington, all the things I sell to people when I sell them homes. But we've got a great rec park, and we've got a river that's fabulous, and so we really need to pay attention to those things too.
Thank you, Faith. Amy, I was thinking about how we keep talking about the millennials
coming in, and then I think about our population in Arlington of older people, and I wonder if we couldn't kind of think backwards. And, you know, I think about my mom, who has a big house with 3 bedrooms, and she mows her own yard, and, you know, fairly soon, she's gonna want a condo or something smaller and easier to take care of. And then she's gonna move out of her house, which is gonna be a great family house for somebody. So, you know, I'm thinking like, okay, so building for millennials is cool, but we could also think about building for older people who want to stay in Arlington but don't want to take care of their big houses anymore. And yeah, move them out of their big houses and get some families in there to bring them into school. To bring them into school.
Or get in a 3 apartment, the big circle.
That Lion King moment, right? The circle of life, of how, we were talking at lunchtime, how my mother grew up in a home where her grandparents lived on the first floor. Her father and mother lived on the second floor raising their children. When her grandparents passed, her parents moved downstairs. She and her brother kind of got their feet underneath them and moved out. So this multi-generation living in one home. Tide has a commercial out right now where it's a husband and wife folding the laundry in the living room, and they're like, "Are these yours?" And then her father-in-law comes out with no pants on.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's that circle is happening again. And at one point, and forgive me, I can't remember, Jim, who was speaking at one of the Arlington Renewal Project meetings. It might have been Lottie, talking about grants that were available to homeowners to do the $5,000, $10,000 investment to maybe make their garage an in-law suite. So that you're making affordable, and then once the in-laws aren't there, it's a rental rental property, or your college student moves back, and looking at that, and I think that's a really interesting thing that we, as a community, could also be thinking about, investing in those properties that we already have and making them multi-generational or multi-family. So just food for thought on that. I want to, like Jim always says, keep on target. We have, at our board meetings at the health center, we have a timekeeper, and it's actually me. And so I will stay true to our timing. But I wanted to I've got so many pages of notes, pardon. We'll kind of hit on a couple things before we end this conversation, and this kind of banter back and forth is going to continue into this next section of our agenda, but it is so very impressive to me the ways that our community, and I consider not just the folks that are from and work in Arlington, Sandgate, and Sunderland, but those folks that are here today who see the value in our community growing and strengthening, that we are here and we're meeting the needs of the people who live here, and those are the needs of people we want to attract here. We have a school system, as we talked about earlier, that's meeting the needs of our students, meeting and exceeding state requirements. We have jobs that are here and available, as Florence was telling about Mac Molding, and now Nicole talking about 240 positions at Orvis. So we have jobs here, and we have them at all levels of education and skill. So those are here. We have a health center, which I proudly say is in the heart of Arlington and is the only community health center in Bennington County that houses under one roof mental, medical, dental, and MAT programs and services. And that's regardless of ability to pay. So we're meeting those needs. And we have a community, the people here in this room, that are proud and deep-rooted in what we're doing here. So kind of ending the Arlington Renewal Project and what we do, and some notes of some action items, because we did talk about that we don't want to just talk and have a plan. We want to have some actions out of this. So through our conversations, we've talked about a survey that has that maybe goes out to local businesses, maybe starting with Orvis and Mac kind of as our incubators, and maybe even the health center at a smaller level. But talking about the needs of and desires of those folks who work in Arlington but don't live here. What is it that would get them to move here? And quite frankly, I was in the private school sector for a long time. Not one size fits all, right? So not everyone is going to want to live and work in Arlington, there's definitely a crowd who wants to have Manchester or Bennington at their fingertips when they get home. They want to just kind of go home and not be in the backyard. But what is it that we do to get those folks here that are working here? We need a place for HR and employees locally that can have a list of landlords. I think that was a great piece that came out of this conversation. And thank you for kind of listing yourself as a resource where we can do that. But maybe that's even added to our website that we're really working hard to make user-friendly to our community. One of the things that the Arlington Renewal Project is doing to address not just the needs in housing, but for those of you who don't know, we're addressing the needs of education, health, governance, recreation, entertainment. We have committees that are working hard over the past year to address all of those needs so that we can be that town that attracts folks to our community. Starting with the farmers market that we implemented last year for 6 weeks this year. It's 12 weeks. It starts June 21st. It's Friday nights, 4 to 7. Just a simple plug. Right in the heart of Arlington on 7A and on the Arlington front lawn. And so we're already doing those things that when, those teachers from Burton are heading home to Greenwich, New York, because they can't afford a house in Arlington right now, those are the reasons why they want to come to Arlington. And so we're creating those moments here. We have the Arlington Young Professionals, which it's a small but mighty group, and it's just going to get better. And with Allie, really pushing it, and I think the employers, Mac Molding, and I keep kind of picking on Mac Molding and Orbis, but with our two largest employers, if they can really kind of get behind that bus and encourage their employees to attend, would be amazing. And then we have our monthly meetings the first Tuesday of each month at the Legion, 6:30 to 8, and Jim facilitates those with usually a guest speaker on a pertinent subject, and then open to the committee level. So I really want to thank you all for being here today. Jim, thanks for facilitating this event and bringing such great, powerful, knowledgeable people to the tables. At that, thank you to my panel for talking about Vision 2025, and then we'll go back over to Jim. Thank you all.